My wife Willow and I went for a medical checkup, and it turned out she had stomach cancer. I went back home to talk to my parents, thinking about selling our house to save her, but my mom said to me, "I can give you the house deed, but on one condition. You must tell her it's you who has stomach cancer." I was speechless at my mom's request, but for the sake of saving my wife, I did as she asked. That same night, my mother-in-law rushed over to our house and tried to persuade me to get a divorce, saying I shouldn't drag her daughter down with me. Willow also said to me, "If you truly love someone, you wouldn't hold them back." I stared blankly at her, unable to believe she could say something like that. From the beginning, I knew what my mom was trying to do. She wanted to test the strength of our relationship, to see if my wife was really worth selling the house for. I always thought that our love was rock solid and could withstand any test, but now I realize the old saying is true: husband and wife are like birds in the same forest. When disaster strikes, they fly their separate ways. Willow saw me frozen in silence and sincerely said, "You know, fighting cancer isn't as simple as you think. You can look it up. For most families battling cancer, the money runs out, and the person still doesn't make it." My mother-in-law jumped in anxiously. "Exactly. By then, we'd have to sell the house, sell the car, borrow money from everyone, and in the end, it still might not work. When you're gone, what will happen to my daughter?" I had always been respectful toward my mother-in-law, but this time, I completely ignored her. I looked straight into my wife's eyes and asked seriously, "Is that really how you feel?" She said, "I just hope you won't be selfish and think about me too." I asked, "Do you really think wanting to stay alive is a selfish thing?" Willow sighed and said, "All I know is, if I were the one with cancer, I'd never drag you down. I would divorce you and face it on my own." I fell silent. My mother-in-law wiped away tears and said to me, "I know this hurts, but what wrong has my daughter done? She's still so young. What's she supposed to do with the rest of her life?" Suddenly, I started to wonder if maybe she was right. I'm still young. If I use up all of my family's savings trying to save my wife, and in the end she still doesn't make it, what will happen to my future? At that moment, Willow suddenly handed me the divorce papers. I felt a chill in my heart. I had just told her about the diagnosis, and she already had divorce documents ready. I picked up the agreement and couldn't help but freeze. It was a total trap of a contract. After the divorce, not only would she get half of our cash, the house would go entirely to her. The only thing left to me would be a car. I suspected that if she could drive, even the car wouldn't be mine. Willow said, "If you agree, just sign it and we'll go file the divorce at the Civil Affairs Bureau." I asked, "Do you really think this contract is fair? My family bought that house. Why should it go to you after the divorce?" My mother-in-law quickly interjected, "Don't you remember what I said when you married my daughter? I made it clear that you had to have a house to get married." I said, "I remember. But aren't we talking about divorce now?" She replied urgently, "That house is my daughter's security. It was meant to protect her in case something like this happened after marriage. Now that you're seriously ill, isn't it perfectly reasonable for us to take that security back?" I took a sharp breath. I never imagined that the security they mentioned before marriage would mean this. The bride price was security. The house was security too. If I cheated, she'd take the security. If I died of illness, she'd still take the security. When risk shows up, she takes all the gains. What do I get left with? I said angrily, "No way. I'm not giving you the house. I'm just sick. I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I give it to you?" Willow looked at me with sad, gentle eyes and said, "You won't even give me a final gift." In the past, when she spoke to me with that pitiful expression, my heart would ache, but this time, all I felt was a chill deep down. A gift. Taking someone's home while they're seriously ill, and having the audacity to call it a gift, that's shameless. My mother-in-law saw I was being firm and softened her tone a little. "Listen to me," she said. "This house isn't just for my daughter. What if something happens to you later? Doesn't someone need to look after your parents?" Willow quickly chimed in. "Exactly. I'll help take care of your mom and dad in the future." I stared at her coldly. At this point, I didn't believe a word she said. Before we got married, she clearly told me she didn't want to live with my parents. That's why we bought this separate house. And now she says she'll take care of them. How can I believe that? I sneered. "My parents don't need your help." Willow nodded and said, "Fine. Then let's go to court." I gasped. I looked at her in disbelief and said, "You know I have stomach cancer, and you still want to take me to court?" My mother-in-law snapped, clearly losing patience. "We tried talking nicely, but you don't get it. Huh? You want the harsh truth. You're already sick. We drag you through court for a few years. You think you'll live long enough to protect those assets?" She got more and more worked up, even pointing her finger in my face. "By the time you're dead, it'll be your elderly parents dragging us to court. You think we're afraid of them?" Rage flared inside me. This whole family, they're snakes. And to think I actually considered selling the old house to save her life. Willow said, "Mom, don't argue with him. Let me speak from the heart." She took my hand, her face full of sincerity. but the face I once loved so much, now, all I felt was disgust. Willow said seriously, let's try switching perspectives. Okay, if I were the one who got sick, I would have left most of my assets to you. I'd want you to take care of my parents after I'm gone. Her mother quickly added, see, look how thoughtful my daughter is. And now look at yourself, don't you feel ashamed? What the hell do you even think about all day? I said, I think about how a husband and wife should get through hard times together. Willow shook her head. That's such a childish thought. I asked, how is that childish? She said, this so-called going through hard times together, it sounds noble, but in reality, you're dragging me down to suffer your hardship. If I stay with you, I'll waste my youth, my savings, and end up old, broke, and used up, and then you'll quietly leave this world, leaving me with nothing. Is that what you want? Listening to Willow's words felt like knives stabbing into my heart. I had thought that if she were ever sick, I'd give everything I had to save her, but it never occurred to me that if the roles were reversed, and I was the one who got sick, her first reaction would be to think of me as a burden. I sighed and said sorrowfully, how can there be such a thing as a burden between husband and wife? We clearly made a vow that no matter how poor or how sick we became, nothing would tear us apart. She shook her head and said, you're being too naive. Let me tell you what horrifying things would happen if we didn't get divorced. I didn't understand how this turned into something horrifying, but she looked dead serious. In the beginning, sure, I'd stay by your side and go through treatment with you, but as time passes, the savings would dwindle, debts would pile up, and we might even be forced to sell our house and car. Do you really think we could still live a good life? I didn't respond. Instead, I found myself imagining the scenarios she described. She continued, then what? You'd be so sick you couldn't even walk, and I'd have to carry you to the hospital without a car. We'd be taking the bus in the wind and rain. I'd be wiping your piss and shit day after day. Wouldn't that make you feel guilty? I couldn't help but say, there's still a chance with treatment. If we can just get through this rough patch, things might get better in the future. Seeing that I was still trying to argue, Willow suddenly snapped, but why should I gamble the rest of my life on a maybe? Just that one sentence chilled me to the bone. She went on, and what if the gamble fails? Then it's my entire life down the drain. You keep talking about facing things together, but isn't that just selfish? From beginning to end, all you ever thought about was making me sacrifice. As she spoke, tears welled up in her eyes. Crying, she said, I'm a human being too. Before you fight to stay alive, did you ever think that I'm just a person who wants a normal, happy life? My mother-in-law quickly handed her tissues and wiped away her tears. She patted Willow's shoulder and comforted her. This man has no sense of gratitude. All he thinks about is himself. He never once considered how you feel. Willow's sobs grew heavier and heavier until she broke into a full-on wail. Why the hell should I spend decades of my life gambling on your maybe? If you really loved me, would you be dragging me down like this? I stared at her tear-streaked face, her words echoing in my head. She was right. Why should I gamble away her next few decades for the slim hope of my survival? In that moment, I realized how terrifyingly foolish I had been. It was also in that moment that I finally understood my mother's good intentions. She once said, right now, you've fallen into the abyss. If I could, I'd pull you out, but I'm too weak. If you keep clinging to me, you'll drag us both down into the pit. I gave a bitter smile and said, you're right. If we ever loved each other, we should think about what's best for the other. There's no need to drag each other into the abyss. Sensing that I was finally relenting, Willow and my mother-in-law exchanged a glance and quickly said, full of emotion, yes, I'm glad you understand now. The reason I'm asking for a divorce today isn't because I'm heartless. It's because we loved each other. That's exactly why we can't go down this road together. Just then, my phone suddenly rang. It was a text from my mother. She wrote, I've already asked around. Our old house can still be sold for about 600,000 yuan. That should be enough to cover a few years of treatment. My mother-in-law caught a glimpse of the screen. Her expression instantly changed. So you've already contacted your mom to sell the old house, haven't you? Willow gasped. You talked to your family about selling their house and didn't even discuss it with me. You're unbelievably selfish. If I hadn't brought up divorce today, would you have secretly gone ahead and sold it? My mother-in-law jumped in angrily. He never saw you as part of his family. He's just trying to sell the old house so he can bring his parents over here. Then you won't just be taking care of him, you'll have to serve 2 elderly people as well. Willow bit her lip and said, I really didn't think you were this kind of person. What gives you the right to make your parents live with me without asking for my consent? I replied, hold on, you're contradicting yourself. Earlier, you said that if I left the house to you, you'd help take care of my parents. But now you're saying you won't live with them. So which is it? She snapped back. That's in the future, after I've made it in my career. If they move in now, won't that completely derail everything I've worked for? Her mother quickly added, you are not allowed to sell that old house. Absolutely not. If you sell it now, how is my daughter supposed to buy a new home later? Your parents will just use the excuse that they have nowhere to go and latch onto her for life. I gave a bitter laugh and said, I never thought I'd see the day where my parents have to get permission from you to sell their own property. My mother-in-law righteously declared, you're not only dragging down your wife, you're dragging down your parents too. You're irresponsible. Let me make this clear, you are not allowed to sell that house. If you even try to put it on the market, I'll show up every single day to make a scene. No one will dare buy it. That's when I truly understood. If I was the one who got sick, they wouldn't just want half my savings and the house, they wouldn't even allow my parents to sell their own house, just in case they ended up with nowhere to live and moved in with Willow. Willow looked at me in disappointment and said, why have you become like this? I said I would take care of your parents, but not right now. This is the critical period in my career. If you drag me down now, how can I possibly help your family in the future? I gave a bitter smile. So what you're saying is, even if I used up all of my own savings because of my illness, I still wouldn't be allowed to let my parents sell their house to save me. Willow responded seriously. Don't twist my words to make me sound cruel. I just want you to think about others, about me and your parents, not just yourself. I used to feel guilty, but now I see clearly. Divorcing you is the right decision. You really are selfish. At that point, I realized how foolish I'd been. If my mom hadn't told me to lie, I might have wasted everything I had on this heartless woman. I sighed and said, fine, since you want a divorce, let's get divorced. Willow and my mother-in-law exchanged glances. Neither had expected me to agree so easily. Willow quickly said, all right then, just don't blame me for this. If I were the one who got sick, I would have made the same decision. I asked her, are you saying all of this from the bottom of your heart? She replied, of course, every word is sincere. If I'm lying, may I be struck by lightning. I gave a bitter laugh. All right, I'll sign. My mother-in-law immediately got excited. She patted me on the shoulder and said, I knew I wasn't wrong about you. You're a man of responsibility and integrity. Willow quickly brought over a pen. Handing it to me, she put on a gentle face again and said, this is for the best. We once loved each other so passionately. Let's not end things on a sour note. I sneered, then erased her name from the party of section of the contract and signed my own name instead. Her smile froze. She asked, what's the meaning of this? Looking at her face, I thought about all the memories we'd shared over the years. To be honest, I was still willing to give her one final chance. I said sincerely, you keep saying you're afraid of being dragged down. So now, I'm giving back everything that's legally yours. In fact, since I earn more than you, you're actually walking away with more than your share. Then I gently took her hand and said, you know I'm a sick man right now. I want to live. If I keep some of the property, I may still have a chance to sell it later for treatment. You won't be burdened anymore. If you ever truly loved me, then at the very least, don't take away my hope of staying alive. Please? This was the last chance I would give her. If she agreed, then maybe everything she said earlier was sincere, and I was just misjudging her like a cynic. If she were truly a decent person, then of course I would give everything to try and save her too. Unfortunately, Willow didn't treasure that chance. She flung my hand aside and shouted, you promised me before we got married that I'd have a house as security, and now you're basically a dead man. Why should I give up my guarantee of security? I stared at her hysterical face, completely disheartened. So this was her true face all along. Looking back, everything she said earlier now just seemed laughable. My mother-in-law suddenly snatched the divorce agreement and tore it to pieces. Gritting her teeth, she said, fine, then let's take this to court. Let's see how long you can hold out. You dying man. She then threw the shredded papers in my face and snarled, when we were being nice to you, you didn't appreciate it. Now we're going to get tough, and then you'll know what regret really feels like. Starting today, I'll be at your family's old house every single day. If you even think about selling it, I'll raise hell. I stared coldly at the two of them throwing their tantrum. Willow calmly pulled out her phone, made a call, and said, lawyer, we couldn't come to an agreement. Let's go to court. So it turns out she wasn't just prepared with a divorce agreement, she'd already hired a professional divorce lawyer. No wonder she moved so fast. I gave a bitter laugh. So everything you said earlier was a lie. And the saddest part is, I was still thinking that if you were the one going through this, I'd do everything I could to save you. My mother-in-law mocked me with a cold smirk. Oh wow. Guess we should have hoped it happened to my daughter instead. Huh. Too bad she's going to live a long, happy life. You're the one dying of cancer. I shook my head. It's come to this. Let's just file the divorce. My mother-in-law snapped. The property hasn't even been divided yet. How can you just file for divorce? Willow quickly tugged on her mom's sleeve and said, Mom, it's fine. We can still sue over the property after getting the divorce certificate. She whispered something softly into my mother-in-law's ear. After hearing it, my mother-in-law suddenly understood and hurriedly said to Willow, all right, go apply for the divorce with him now. Watching Willow with her mysterious little smirk, I already understood what was going through her mind. In fact, we were probably thinking the exact same thing. I wasn't going to take out my medical diagnosis at a moment like this just to shock them. Only a fool would do that. Because both Willow and I had thought of the same law. According to marriage law in our country, spouses are legally obligated to care for each other. Right now, she believed I was sick. If she refused to help me, she'd be breaking the law. Likewise, if I refused to take care of her, I'd be breaking the law too. If I had pulled out my diagnosis report right now, Willow would absolutely refuse to divorce. And then what? Knowing how the court usually works, they would most certainly reject my divorce application. The court would likely expect me to be kind and responsible, to fulfill my duty to care for her during this difficult time. There was a high probability they'd rule against the divorce. So yes, what Willow and I were both thinking at that moment was the same: divorce quickly, before the legal obligation to support each other kicks in. That's why I knew only an idiot would reveal their diagnosis at that time. If the other side refused to divorce, I'd be completely screwed. Sure enough, right after we submitted our divorce application to the Civil Affairs Bureau, Willow vanished. She didn't contact me at all, spent all her time gathering evidence of my assets and consulting with her lawyer. My mother-in-law started showing up at my family's old house every day, afraid we'd sell it behind their backs. All I could feel was sadness. She was so busy preparing for the property lawsuit that she didn't even have time to go to the hospital and pick up her own medical report. During this period, I wasn't idle either. I did something sneaky too. I reached out to lawyers all over the place, just to let Willow know I was preparing for a legal battle as well. That made her even more anxious, and she completely ignored her own health check results, running around every day. At last, after this tug-of-war, the divorce cooling-off period ended. We finally received our divorce certificate. Willow put it away and sneered. Now let's take our time with the property lawsuit. Let's see if I can drag you to death. I sighed and handed her the medical report. We were husband and wife. After all, I've got a little gift for you. She paused. What is it? I said. Remember how we went for a health checkup together? I called the hospital. You've been so busy. You never went to pick up your results, so I picked them up for you. Willow instantly let out a cold laugh. Oh, now you're trying to act like you care, hoping I'll go easy on you in court. Not a chance. Her mother stood beside her and encouraged. Don't fall for his tricks. He's just selfish. Don't get soft just because he's pretending to care. The lawyer said, don't be scared, and don't back down. I smiled bitterly. At least take a look first. She snatched the report from my hand and started reading it. As she read, something seemed off. Her brow furrowed tightly. What does this mean? I said. You really can't understand your own medical report? She snapped impatiently. We're already divorced. Don't talk to me in that condescending, male chauvinist tone. It makes me want to puke. If you've got something to say it. If you've got crap to spew, then spit it out. My mother-in-law chimed in. Exactly. You're already half dead. Don't sit there mocking us for not having an education. If you've got something to say, make it quick. No one wants to hear your babbling. I let out a long sigh and said, 1 month ago, your report showed signs of stomach cancer. I rushed home to persuade my parents to sell their house to save you. But my mom told me to pretend I was the one who was sick, just to test you. The two of them stood frozen, stunned. Willow looked at the report again in disbelief, her voice trembling. This can't be true. You must be lying. You're doing this just to disgust me. I shrugged. If you don't believe me, go get a second opinion at another hospital. I don't think it's necessary, though. You don't have much money left. You should be spending it where it matters most. Willow stood there dumbfounded, holding the report, completely at a loss. My mother-in-law snatched the report from her hands, scanning it frantically. Her whole body began to tremble, and she cried out, How could the sick one be my daughter? I said coldly, giving you that report, that's my last gesture of goodwill. You never went to the hospital to pick it up yourself. You wasted an entire month. Honestly, that was really stupid. If you hadn't been so obsessed with money and lawsuits, if you'd cared even a little about your health, none of this would have been wasted. After I finished speaking, I turned to leave, but at that moment, my mother-in-law suddenly broke down in loud, uncontrollable sobs. Willow grabbed my arm, her hands trembling. Wait, you can't leave. I don't want the divorce anymore. She threw the divorce certificate back onto the counter and anxiously said to the clerk, We changed our minds. We don't want the divorce. Please help us cancel it. The clerk looked helpless. You've already received the certificate. It's too late now. Where were you during the 1-month cooling-off period? Willow pleaded. We can't get divorced. I take it back. Please, help us remarry. I shook off her hand and said calmly, Even if you want to remarry, I don't agree to it anymore. Besides, you're the one who asked for the divorce. Now you want to take it back like it's nothing. What do you think marriage is? Some kind of joke? Tears instantly streamed down her face as she clung to my hand and cried. How could you do this to me? You knew I was sick, yet you still divorced me. I looked at her in disbelief. Do you hear yourself? Weren't you the one who said if someone got sick, we should get divorced so we don't drag each other down? She sobbed. That's not the same. Ah, there it was. The double standard. I rolled my eyes. I really couldn't see how this was any different. I turned to leave again, but she quickly clung to my arm once more, desperately saying, "You can't leave. Let's go get remarried right now. We once loved each other so passionately. How can you abandon me at my lowest point?" My mother-in-law cried out too. "Yes, my daughter used to love you so much, and who says cancer can't be treated? There's always a chance of recovery." I let out a cold laugh and threw her own words back at her. "And why should I gamble the rest of my life on a maybe for you?" Willow, furious and flustered, shouted, "If you walk out that door today, we'll sue you. We'll fight you to the bitter end." I shrugged with indifference. "Go ahead. Sue me all you want. Let's see how many years you can drag it out. By the time you die from your illness, I'll take your parents to court instead. Please, don't go." Willow broke down completely. She suddenly dropped to her knees in front of me, clinging to my hand with a pitiful expression. "I was wrong. I was immature before. Please, for the sake of the love we once had, don't leave me now, not when I need you most." Looking at her tear-streaked, pleading face, I felt a chill deep in my bones. I said, "When I first found out you were sick, I did everything I could to help you, but you and your mom insisted that being sick meant we shouldn't burden the other person. You even caused a scene at my parents' house, refusing to let us sell our old home. Wasn't this the exact result you both wanted?" Willow wept and trembled. "It's different now. The situation is different," I said firmly. "Please keep your promise. You told me many times, if you were the one who got sick, you would never drag me down. So don't be selfish now. Think about me for once." In a panic, my mother-in-law blocked my way, pointing a trembling finger at me. She screamed, "You heartless bastard. How could you walk away from your wife after she's been diagnosed with cancer? What kind of morally bankrupt man are you?" She was shouting so loudly, clearly trying to attract attention, but unfortunately for her, we hadn't exactly been quiet up to this point. Everyone nearby had already heard the whole story. The crowd now looked at them with no sympathy. If anything, their gazes carried thinly veiled contempt and mockery. I said, "Get out of the way. Good dogs don't block the road." My mother-in-law went mad with rage, raising her hand like she was about to slap me. I said coldly, "Go ahead. Hit me. Try it. Your family's desperate for money right now. If you lay a hand on me, I'll throw myself on the ground and fake an injury. Let's see how much money you've got left to compensate me." She stared daggers at me, her hand frozen in midair, but in the end, she lowered it and softened her tone. "It was our fault. All of it." "What? Do you want me to kneel and beg before you'll even consider remarrying my daughter?" I paused for a moment, then said, Sounds like something I might consider." Hearing that, she immediately dropped to her knees and started kowtowing before me, desperate. "It was all our fault. We were foolish before. I beg you, please save my daughter. We have no money. She'll die otherwise." Watching her kneel and knock her head against the ground in front of me, I honestly found the whole thing a bit ridiculous. When she was done, she looked up at me, her face full of hopeful anticipation. "So, now can you remarry my daughter?" I replied with a straight face. After thinking it through, "No, I won't remarry her." My mother-in-law's face instantly turned dark. She shouted furiously, "How dare you play me like that?" I shrugged, completely unfazed. I made myself perfectly clear from the beginning. I said I'd consider it, and now that I've considered it, I've decided not to remarry. Is that a problem? If you're not happy about it, go ahead, hit me. Her face turned purple with rage, but in this situation, she didn't dare lay a finger on me. Willow completely broke down. Through sobs, she cried, "Do you really have to do this to my whole family? You know I'm dying, and yet you still humiliate me and my mother." I replied, "I'm only humiliating you, but when you thought I was the one dying, you were out to destroy me." She cried, "No, I wasn't trying to destroy you. I just thought, one of us had to live on. At least one of us should have a future." I nodded. "Exactly, and now I want to be the one who lives." "Congrats, your words convinced me. Too bad I used to be such an idiot. Trying to save you." Her mother exploded again, yelling, "You knew your wife had cancer and you didn't say anything. That's illegal." I said, "Go ahead, call the police." She didn't pick up her report. How the hell is that my fault? And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving Willow and her mother standing there like fools. But things didn't end so easily. I had underestimated just how shameless those two could be. After realizing I wasn't going to remarry, they went full scorched earth. First, they cried in front of my building and told sob stories to the neighbors. Then they brought the drama to my workplace, waving banners and accusing me of abandoning a wife with cancer, doing everything they could to ruin my reputation. My workplace called me in for a conversation, but once they heard the full story, everyone was on my side. The boss personally met with me and said, "Let's get you reassigned to another branch in a different city. Also, consider selling the house. Don't let people like this drag you down." He was right. Those two had gone completely unhinged. If they ever found out her illness was terminal, they might just show up with a knife to take me down with her, and I'd be the one who lost everything. Thankfully, my company was decent enough to transfer me to another city. Publicly. They told everyone I had been fired. Privately. I packed up and left with my parents, didn't tell anyone where we moved. The apartment and old family home were both put up for sale. In this kind of situation, the best solution is to get as far away as possible. There's no point in arguing with lunatics. But Willow wasn't ready to give up on the lawsuit. Civil disputes like these always take time. By the time the court date arrived, I finally saw her again. She looked skin and bones now, sitting on the courtroom bench and sobbing as she pleaded with the judge. He left me when I needed help the most. All I want now is justice. I'm just a pitiful woman trying to stay alive. Either nullify the divorce, or at least award me the house. She wept pitifully, but I had come fully prepared. I presented surveillance footage from our home as evidence, and played it for the court. As the judge watched the footage, she frowned and asked Willow, "You were the one who initiated the divorce, correct? When you believed he was the one who was sick?" Willow sobbed. "That was different. He's a man, and he earns more than I do." At the time, I thought, I'm just an ordinary woman. I wouldn't be able to take care of him or afford his medical expenses. Divorce seemed like the best choice. The judge asked, "Then why do you now believe that just because you're sick, he has no right to divorce you?" Willow said, "I already explained, because he earns more. He should take care of me. I'm practically dying now. Even if I made mistakes, surely I don't deserve to die for them. I'm just a normal girl." When something terrible happened, of course I panicked and made the wrong decision. I just hope the court can give me a chance to make things right. The judge replied flatly, "I'm a woman too, and I don't agree with your reasoning." Finally, the court gave its verdict. The court ruled that the house was bought before the marriage and therefore belonged solely to me. Willow had no right to any of it. As for the marital assets acquired during the marriage, they were to be split 50-50ths, as shared property. However, out of humanitarian concern, the court ordered me to pay 50,000 yuan. That was the final judgment. Losing 50,000 was far better than losing the house, but Willow wasn't satisfied. Crying, she protested, "I don't accept this. I'm going to appeal. What can 50,000 yuan even do for me?" I replied calmly, "Funny, I don't accept it either. I'm going to appeal too." My mother-in-law shouted angrily, "You already got to keep the house. What right do you have to appeal?" I shrugged and said, "This is the tactic you two taught me. I can keep appealing and dragging this out until your daughter dies. When that happens, the humanitarian compensation won't be 50,000 anymore. All you'll get is a couple thousand for burial costs." My mother-in-law gasped in horror, then completely lost it, screaming, "How can you be so vicious?" Vicious? Honestly, I didn't think so. Back when I thought my wife was sick, I was ready to give up everything to save her. But when I realized she wasn't my lover, she was my enemy. Why would I go soft on my enemy? The judge asked if I intended to formally file an appeal. I simply smiled and shook my head. I knew there was a time limit to file it, and I planned to wait until the very last moment to submit it. I had only one strategy now: stall. Exactly the way that mother and daughter had planned to deal with me in the beginning. In the end, Willow didn't make it to the next hearing. Her family had no money left, and the lawsuit drained her physically and emotionally. Her condition quickly deteriorated. The day she died, I heard the news. I couldn't help but sigh. We once loved each other so fiercely, but I never imagined that even a love so intense could blind me so completely. I just want to offer a piece of advice to everyone out there. Be a little kinder to yourself. Don't foolishly pour all your love and sacrifices into someone, just to move yourself to tears, because the person on the receiving end may never have been worth your trust. Some men, no matter how good their wives are to them, will still end up choosing a younger woman. Some women, no matter how much their husbands love them, will still end up cheating and putting a green hat on their men. I'm not trying to spread fear about marriage. I just want to remind you, when you're giving your all, blindly and selflessly, please, leave yourself a way out.